Hello, everyone. Welcome to Equals. This is Naf.
Hello, everyone, and this is Grazielli.
Hi, Graziele. This is going to be the third episode of the new season, but this is going to be my first episode with you, and I'm really excited about that. How are you? How's it going in Goiânia?
I'm really excited to do this for the first time with you too. Goiânia is a city near the capital of Brazil called Brasília, and it's really sunny here, really warm, so very good.
I'm really jealous because it's getting cold in London. It's also gray, and I don't even think the winter has started. But anyway, what is the topic for today?
So today we're going to talk about a big protest that happened in Kenya, and it was because people couldn't accept any more regressive taxes, so they went to the streets, and that's what we're going to hear today.
I'm really excited about that because we have all been following it, no, in June, July, because some of our colleagues are also based in Kenya. Oxfam is also based in Kenya. So we have with us today Grace Wendo. She's a youth activist. She's currently studying Bachelor of Technology and Real Estate at the Technical University of Kenya.
I'm really excited to hear from her and what she has to tell us about these protests.
It's going to be a really good discussion. Let's dig in. Grace, really great having you with us. Your insights on the recent Kenyan protest have been invaluable. And in today's episode, it will be great to dive into details. Could you share with our listeners about the protest that broke out in Kenya this past summer, which we understand had strong repression from the government? And also, the news coverage was global. So we would like to know what sparked these demonstrations.
Thank you for having me here. I'll just speak about what happened in Kenya. So, we had a nationwide protest that commenced on the 18th of June. So, what was the catalyst of the protest? It was the imposed tax increases with the finance bill that was being introduced in Kenya for the Finance Bill 2024 that were increasing taxes. But beyond even the increase in taxes, we had other underlying issues that Kenyans were really facing that made them actually have such a wide uprising, such as the economic state of the country, the high unemployment rate of the among the youth. We have the classist education and health sector, which is where we are finding that Kenyans cannot actually access good education, they cannot access good health, and even lack of accountability among our leaders. These are some of the things that actually led to Kenyans actually coming out in huge numbers just to protest and say, enough is enough, we need a bit of change on our end.
How did that happen? Was there like a specific coordination, a group coordinating online, offline? What made the mobilization so successful?
It's quite interesting because the protests were quite organic. So previously in our country, we have been having quite a number of protests, but for these, it was quite organic in the sense that we didn't have any political interest fueling the protest. It was just purely the young people in Kenya just coming together. They used platforms like the social media platforms like X, TikTok to spread awareness about what was happening and the kind of issues that we were facing. So the mobilization actually happened online, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok. And then now the Kenyan youth just, showed up.
It's incredible the offline and online coordination of the public during the protest. And I think this must have helped with your success in making your demands be heard. But there were also reports of, significant violence and repression during the protests, including the storming of the Kenyan parliament. Were you there at the protest or people close to you involved? Can you describe what happened and the impact it had?
So when the protest started, they were quite peaceful, other than the police actually just throwing a lot of tear gas to us. But on the 25th of June, we had the finance bill was passed. The finance bill was passed while the protesters were outside arranging outside parliament, and still the MPs passed the finance bill. So that led to, the Kenyan, us as the Kenyan youth, getting very angry because we've been trying to communicate that we don't want this bill and you're still passing it. That is what led to actually the youth becoming a bit violent and getting into parliament, breaking into parliament just to, you know, have some action done.
Well, and despite this violence, these episodes of violence, were some of the demands requested attended by the government, or nothing that was requested was actually happened?
So when the protest was starting, our main agenda was reject the finance bill. So after the Kenyan youth broke into parliament on the 25th, on the 26th of June, the president actually refused to actually pass it as law. But that was still not enough because there were other issues like the economic condition of the country. We really needed that to be improved. We have not seen any changes so far. We wanted to have better opportunities for employment for the Kenyan youth. We have not seen any changes so far. In our education, we have things like the new university funding model that we were against. We have not seen, things that are making our education system better. Our health system is actually becoming worse. So, other than the finance bill not being passed, our needs were not really met from the protests.
Really important points. My perception was that the protest resulted in a huge win. But what you're saying makes me realize that, one, only a portion of the public's demand was met. And two, your overall demand actually was for a broader reform for social and economic justice. And in connection to that, Grace, you've already touched upon this. What was the role of the IMF in shaping the financial bill and also in shaping, the proposed tax increases? And what are people's views of the IMF and their policies in Kenya?
Even when the protests were happening, we found that people are very angry with IMF because what happened is in April of 2021, IMF came to Kenya for relief because we have a lot of debt. We have a very big debt as a country. So just to help create a conducive economic environment, IMF had offered to help Kenya. So some of the conditions that IMF had involved were hiking the taxes by the Kenyan government, reducing subsidies and cutting the government waste just to increase the government revenue. So the IMF actually led to our president coming up with a finance bill that was saying like let's just find any way of just increasing taxes, things from income taxes, from the VAT. We were having like a lot of things being taxed. So Kenyans were not really very happy with IMF. We feel like it's just imposing very, very harsh conditions on the people because, if you come and tax the income of people who are already not having enough, that is really having a very negative impact on their livelihoods because income that they already have is not enough to just, sustain them and give them a good lifestyle.
Yeah, I understand you. Here in Latin America, where I'm based, the IMF also has a big presence, and people are not happy with their recommendations, let's say, to the governments. And something I was willing to understand, Grace, are people in Kenya against all kind of taxes, or just those ones that are very regressive and indirect, like VAT or income tax on the ones that don't have that amount of income? Would they support like a tax on the super rich, for example?
So in Kenya, we are not really against taxes. The biggest problem that we are having is having been taxed so highly, yet we're not seeing how the money is being used. For example, Kenyans are against paying very high taxes while they still cannot access public health services. So the very poor in Kenya are not able to actually access hospitals that have medicine. You find that people are not, we don't have good infrastructure. The education system is crumbling. Even the finance bill had places where it was imposing taxes on things like pads. Already in Kenya, we are experiencing pad poverty. Girls cannot be able to afford pads. So if you're imposing taxes on things that people cannot be able to access already, that's where the problem comes in. And then you're finding that only very few individuals are benefiting from the taxes that the Kenyan people are paying. So that's the biggest problem. But if good policies were put into place just to, improve the state of the country, I believe that Kenyans will be willing to just go the extra mile and just pay a bit of taxes to have better services.
If the bill has passed, how would it have affected ordinary Kenyans? How would austerity measures concocted by the Kenyan government and the IMF have impacted ordinary citizens?
Let me give an example of a 24-year-old Kenyan. So, for 24-year-old Kenyan, what that would mean for them would be already the chances of them being employed are very low. Most of the Kenyan youth have not gotten employment. They probably just do small businesses here and there. And they do things like, content creation just to earn little money, or even have small shops just to earn a little bit of income. So the finance bill would actually mean whatever income they're getting will be taxed. The taxes will be very high for them, leaving them to have very little disposable income. Already, the taxes were affecting the agriculture sector, meaning that the food prices in Kenya were going up, going really up. So people won't be having food. They are hungry. They can't be able to afford fuel to move to places. So that means they cannot be able to actually do business. Finance bill. That's why you saw that so many of the Kenyan youth just came out in large numbers, because what it would mean, the changes that it would like evoke on their lives will be drastic.
I hear you, Grace. A friend was also telling me similar stories. She was saying why she joined the protest. She's a single mother who's struggling to send her daughter to a good school. She's also, she also has responsibility for her mom and siblings and extended family because she's the one who pays the rent. She's the one who does groceries, the one who pays everyone's school fees. And when she heard about the finance bill, she said she lost it, and she decided to take her grievance to the street.
Like taxes are necessary for societies for them to work, but they really need to be fair too. And on that, they need to be fair by taxing more the ones that have more, but also with these taxes being used for public services, as you both have said on your examples. But with that in mind, where does the financial bill stands now? We've heard some rumors that it might be revisited. What's the latest information you have on this, Grace?
So what happened was that the president said they would not sign the finance bill to become the law, but potentially these things will be brought back, and we will be in the same positions once again. So Kenyans are really still afraid that this thing can come back and we'll have to go back to fighting, which was not a very good scene for us. So we're just hoping that they don't go through the back doors and just bring it back onto us.
We hope that won't happen. And we also hope, Kenyans and others will continue fighting. And Grace, the challenges that we have been talking about are not unique to Kenya. Yeah. Many other countries, especially in Africa, are facing, similar issues. A colleague from Nigeria was recently telling me how a huge protest took place because the government scrapped the fossil fuel subsidy. And he said this decision will worsen, the cost of living crisis already affecting the public. So you will hear of such, similar stories across the world. Graziele was also mentioning how IMF's draconian rule impacts people in Latin America. So despite the challenges, what gives you hope for the future, Grace? And what advice would you give to people in Kenya and other African countries, facing similar struggles?
Yeah, we've been able to see that even in our neighboring country like Uganda, they tried doing their protest as well, but they're facing almost the similar challenges to what we're facing. So, what I would say to my fellow Africans and other people who are facing the same challenges is that for Kenya, it was really nice to see that how concerned the young people are about the state of the economy. So the only way that the same in the same energy and in the same way that we came out to protest against one thing, we just have to stay concerned and concerned about the issues that we are facing, and find solutions, brainstorm amongst ourselves on ways to improve our economy. I know the government is a bit rigid on listening to the young people, but for us, the population, the young people have a very huge population, and for us to even move and even have any change, it's upon us to actually implement that change. We saw just how much impact we have when we come together, because we have the numbers to change our industries, change things like our trading, change things like the way we do agriculture here. So we just have to come together and be united. The unity is the only way for us to actually even move forward as a people. Stay educated, because one of the things that actually made the Kenyan youth become very successful is just how well versed they were with like knowledge regarding the constitution, regarding their rights, being able to actually understand what the challenges are in their country. So we have to drive the change. If we are seeing leaders who are not accountable, we have to call them out. Be consistent, keep asking for accountability, speak out on the ill injustices that are happening, because we cannot continue with the same trends that have been happening. Otherwise, we'll be in a very crippling position. We won't be able to have a future for the next generation after us. So we really need to guard our nations, ensure that few individuals are not taking advantage of the larger population.
That's very inspiring, Grace. Thank you so much for spending your time with us.
Thank you so much, Grace. Really, really inspiring, and wishing for more fiscal justice for Kenya and better quality of life.
Thank you so much for even taking your time to hear about Kenyans. It's really an honor to be here. Yeah, thank you so much for taking your time. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Grace. You also, to be honest, all the Kenyans that were on the street demonstrating, I think, it's very inspirational, not only for us, I'm sure for our listeners, but for a lot of people that are in the struggle.
So this was a really interesting conversation with Grace, and to hear from her personal experience from her friends, and how this went for the entire population of Kenya. What stood out for you, Nafkot?
Very informative. Agreed, Grazielle. I think I really loved, the Kenyan protest because it really shows the power of people, the power of protest. Like they took to the street to share their grievances, to make their voice heard, and also to protect their rights. And they succeeded in preventing the finance bill from passing. So this also makes me think, should we also be taking to the street? I'm also talking about, as someone who works on climate justice, because we're seeing two things. One, civic space is shrinking across the world, and the second one is whether you're in the global north or global south, whether you're in a rich country or a poor country, we're seeing more austerity. So, how can we fight for our rights? So, I really love the story of the Kenyan protest. It really makes me think maybe it's time for us to mobilize and take to the street so that our voice can be heard, so that we can change things. And you, Graziele, what did you think? What stood out for you?
Well, first, I really want to support what you're saying. Perhaps we really need to go to the streets and make our voices heard. Considering this experience for Kenya, what really caught my attention on this was the subject also. So they were protests for regarding taxes and asking for taxes that are fair. And yeah, we need fair tax systems. We need fair taxes. And that's something that we should be talking about everywhere, because it's important for taxes for themselves to be progressive, to reduce inequality. That's what we're talking about. We need to reduce inequality. So we need fair tax systems. but also because the amount that is collected will also provide the financing for what we need. So, climate action, public education, public health, public care systems. So, yeah, we should be asking more of fair tax systems out of the streets, perhaps.
Exactly. And, connecting to your point, Graziele, Grace was saying the public, the youth need to educate themselves. For instance, on tax justice, yeah, we need to educate ourselves in terms of what are our rights, what can we demand? Because, as Grace was saying, what made the protest in Kenya successful is that it was well coordinated, but in addition, people were educating themselves. They knew about the constitution. They knew about all these, about the finance bill. They knew about their rights, so they knew what to demand. So I think it's also really important, to emphasize this point about educating ourselves and knowing our rights so that we can fight for it.
It's so true. And having channels that you really can trust. And not only spaces of fake news, so making sure that the channels you're using to inform and learn are safe ones and that you can trust. That's really, really important.
Definitely, Grazielle. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. We have more exciting episodes coming your way. The next one is with Mina Raman from the Third World Network, where we will discuss the about climate finance, climate debt, and reparations. So please tune in.
Please tune in and speak soon.
Thank you so much. Have a great week.